The aurora borealis danced across the Norwegian sky, its ethereal lights casting an otherworldly glow over the snow-covered fjords. Lieutenant Astrid Larsen stood at her observation post, sipping coffee and watching the celestial display. 20 years in the Norwegian Air Force hadn't dulled her appreciation for these quiet moments. But tonight was different. The lights were moving wrong. The first indication came as a sudden intensification of the aurora, followed by a visible distortion in its pattern. Astrid grabbed her binoculars, heart racing as she watched a massive object pierce through the light show. It wasn't a meteor, its descent was too controlled, too deliberate. "Control, this is Outpost 7, she radioed, her voice steadied despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We have an unidentified object entering atmosphere, bearing 270, descending rapidly." The object, sleek and crystalline, reflected the aurora's colors as it descended. Its trajectory suggested a controlled landing attempt, but something was wrong. Smoke trailed from one side, and its approach was too steep. Astrid watched in horror as the craft clipped a mountain peak and spun toward the frozen fjord below. The impact shook the earth. Ice shattered, and a plume of steam erupted where the craft met the freezing water. Astrid was already moving, barking coordinates into her radio as she grabbed her emergency gear. Protocol dictated waiting for backup, but something in her gut told her there wasn't time. She reached the crash site 20 minutes later, snowmobile tracks marking her hurried descent. The craft had partially breached the ice, its metallic surface covered in strange, shifting patterns that seemed to pulse with internal light. As she approached, a section of the hull suddenly became transparent, revealing a figure inside. The being was humanoid but clearly alien. Its skin had a subtle iridescence, like mother of pearl, and its features were elegant yet otherworldly. What caught Astrid's attention, however, was the crimson liquid seeping from multiple wounds, blood, or something like it. The alien's eyes opened, revealing pupils that shimmered like liquid mercury. "Please," it spoke, the word forming perfectly in Norwegian, though its lips barely moved. "There isn't much time." Astrid moved closer, weapon lowered but ready. "I'm Lieutenant Larsen. Help is coming." "No time," the alien repeated, its voice carrying an echo of harmonics that made Astrid's skin tingle. "I am Guardian Rena of the Stellari Concordat. My son." It gestured weakly toward a sealed compartment. "He must live. They are coming." Before Astrid could respond, the compartment irised open, revealing a child-sized stasis pod. Inside, an infant slumbered, his skin sharing the same iridescent quality as his mother's. But what made Astrid gasp was the intricate network of light patterns flowing across his tiny form, forming and reforming in impossible geometries. "Who's coming?" Astrid asked, even as she heard the approaching thunder of helicopter rotors. Rena's expression darkened. "The Void Collective. They seek my child, for he carries something they must never possess." She coughed, spattering the strange crystalline control panel with droplets of luminescent blood. The knowledge of 1,000 generations, encoded in his very being. The power to reshape reality itself. Military helicopters appeared over the ridge, their searchlights cutting through the aurora-lit night. Rena grabbed Astrid's arm with surprising strength. "They will reach your world in 72 of your days. You must protect him. In return, I will give your people the means to defend themselves. But you must swear on everything you hold dear, that you will keep him safe." Astrid looked from the dying alien to the child in the stasis pod, then at the approaching military forces. In that moment, she knew her decision would change everything. "I swear," she said, the words feeling like a contract written in starlight. Rena smiled, her form beginning to shimmer with an inner light. "Then receive our legacy, Lieutenant Larsen of Earth." She pressed a crystal into Astrid's hand. "All you need is here. Protect him. Protect your world. And remember, the patterns are the key." As the military forces surrounded the crash site, Rena's body dissolved into pure light, flowing into the crystal in Astrid's hand. The infant stirred in his stasis pod, opening eyes that held the same mercurial shine as his mother's. Above them, the aurora borealis pulsed with newfound intensity, as if nature itself recognized that everything had changed. Humanity's first contact had come at a price, and the countdown to invasion had begun. The underground facility beneath Oslo's outskirts hummed with activity. 3 days had passed since the crash, and Lieutenant Astrid Larsen hadn't left the complex once. She stood before a curved window, watching researchers in containment suits study the alien crystal she'd received from Rena. The crystal had resisted all attempts at analysis, remaining stubbornly inert since the moment of the Guardian's dissolution. Behind her, in a specially constructed chamber, the alien child slept peacefully in his modified stasis pod. They'd named him Evan, Earth Vehicle Alien Neonate, though Astrid found the designation coldly bureaucratic. The geometric patterns flowing across his skin had become more complex with each passing hour, forming equations and symbols that defied understanding. Lieutenant Larsen, called Dr. Thomas Blackwood, the British xenobiologist who'd been flown in hours after the incident. "We found something rather extraordinary." His usual calm demeanor seemed shaken. Astrid followed him to a monitoring station where dozens of screens displayed various readouts. "The child's neural patterns are, well, see for yourself." He pulled up 2 images side by side. "This is a normal human infant's brain activity. And this," he pointed to the second image, which showed complex, fractal patterns, "is our visitor's." "What are we looking at?" Astrid asked, though something about the patterns seemed familiar. They matched the geometric formations on his skin perfectly. But more importantly, they matched these. He switched to another screen showing astronomical data. "These are gravity wave patterns we've been detecting from deep space. They started approximately when the crash occurred." A chill ran down Astrid's spine. "They're looking for him." "Indeed. But that's not all." Thomas led her to another station where researchers were analyzing atmospheric data. "The child's presence is affecting our environment. Look at these readings." The graphs showed subtle but significant changes in local quantum field measurements. Reality itself seemed to be bending slightly around the infant's chamber, as if his mere presence was rewriting the laws of physics. Before Astrid could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed as security personnel rushed to their stations. "Multiple bogies detected in high orbit," a voice announced over the intercom. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Astrid rushed to the command center, where General Viktor Petrov of the United Nations Security Council was already coordinating with global defense forces. 72 days, he growled, his Russian accent thickening with stress. "They're here now." The tactical displays showed 5 objects, each larger than an aircraft carrier, decelerating into Earth orbit. Their design was completely different from Rena's ship, all sharp angles and dark metal, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The crystal in Astrid's pocket suddenly grew warm. She pulled it out, and for the first time since Rena's death, it began to glow. Patterns identical to those on the child's skin appeared on its surface. "The patterns are the key," Astrid whispered, remembering Rena's final words. Acting on instinct, she pressed her palm against the crystal's surface. Knowledge flooded her mind, technical specifications, defensive systems, weapon designs, and most importantly, the true nature of the child's gift. "General," she said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming influx of information, "I know what we need to do. But you're not going to like it." The tactical displays suddenly flickered as a transmission cut through all Earth's communication channels. A harsh, modulated voice filled the command center, "Inhabitants of Sol 3. We are the Void Collective. You harbor an asset of critical importance to our civilization. Surrender the Stellari heir, or we will begin systematic planetary sterilization in exactly 6 Earth hours. Young Evan stirred in his chamber, his tiny form now blazing with geometric light patterns. The crystal in Astrid's hand pulsed in sync with the child's biorhythms, and she understood why Rena had chosen Earth. The knowledge encoded in her son's DNA wasn't just technological, it was a key to unlocking humanity's own dormant potential. "They're not here just for him," Astrid announced, the crystal's knowledge burning in her mind. "They're here because of what he can awaken in us. Humanity has something the Void Collective fears, something even the Stellari couldn't fully grasp. We just need to understand how to access it." General Petrov studied her face carefully. "What exactly are you suggesting, Lieutenant?" "Sir," Astrid replied, watching as the patterns from the crystal began spreading across her own skin, "I'm suggesting we show them why Rena chose us as her son's guardians. But first, we need to evacuate this facility. Things are about to get interesting." Above them, the Void Collective's ships took up attack positions around the planet, their weapons charging. Earth had 6 hours to either surrender an innocent child or discover its own hidden potential. The real question was, would that be enough time to master powers humanity never knew it possessed? The mountain bunker shook as Astrid pressed her hands against its steel walls, geometric patterns of light flowing from her fingertips into the structure itself. The metal groaned, then began to change, crystalline formations spreading across its surface like frost on a winter morning. Behind her, Dr. Blackwood monitored the transformation with a mix of scientific fascination and barely concealed fear. 4 hours remaining, the facility's AI announced dispassionately. In the 3 hours since the Void Collective's ultimatum, the world had descended into controlled chaos. Major cities were being evacuated, military forces were mobilizing worldwide, and in this remote Norwegian bunker, Astrid Larsen was attempting to replicate what the crystal had shown her, how to awaken humanity's dormant potential. "The readings are off the scale," Blackwood muttered, adjusting his instruments. "You're not just changing the metal's structure, you're altering its fundamental quantum state. This shouldn't be possible." Astrid pulled her hands away, watching as the crystalline transformation slowed but didn't stop. "Rena's people didn't give us technology, Thomas. They gave us understanding. The patterns, they're a universal language. The language reality itself is written in." The infant Evan floated in his chamber nearby, his tiny form radiating patterns that had grown increasingly complex. Each new configuration seemed to unlock more knowledge in the crystal, which in turn helped Astrid understand how to tap into abilities that had laid dormant in human DNA for millennia. General Petrov burst into the room, his uniform disheveled. "Lieutenant, we have a situation. The Void Collective ships, they're moving." They rushed to the command center, where holographic displays showed the 5 massive vessels breaking their orbital pattern. 4 moved to cardinal points around the planet, while the 5th began a controlled descent toward Oslo. "They're not waiting for their deadline," Astrid realized. "They know what we're trying to do." A new transmission cut through their communications. "Your attempts to access Stellari knowledge are detected. This violation cannot be permitted. Sterilization protocols initiated." The 4 orbital ships began charging weapons that distorted space itself around their barrels. The 5th ship, now barely 20 kilometers above Oslo, deployed what looked like massive crystalline tentacles, each one crackling with dark energy. "How many people have you awakened?" Petrov demanded. 17, Astrid replied, checking the status board where 17 dots of light pulsed in sync with her own patterns. "All military personnel with the right genetic markers. But they're just beginning to understand their abilities. It will have to be enough." Petrov turned to his communications officer. "Initiate Operation Starburst. Get our people in position." Across the globe, 17 newly awakened humans took up strategic positions. Each carried a shard of Rena's crystal, each bore the flowing patterns of awakened power. They were humanity's first line of defense, if they could figure out how to use their gifts in time. The command center's main screen lit up with a new face, one that made Astrid's blood run cold. The being appeared almost human, but its skin was absolute black, seeming to absorb light. Geometric patterns flowed across its surface too, but these were sharp, aggressive, forming configurations that hurt to look at. "I am Void Speaker Nyx," it announced in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Your species harbors a power you cannot comprehend. The Stellari were fools to believe you could be trusted with it. Surrender the child, and we will grant you a quick extinction. Resist, and we will ensure your suffering echoes across generations." Astrid stepped forward, the patterns across her skin blazing. "You're right about one thing," she replied. "We don't fully comprehend this power. But we understand enough to know why you fear it." She placed her hand on the crystal, and every awakened human across the planet felt the connection surge through them. "You fear it because unlike you, we don't seek to control it. We seek to understand it." The infant Evan suddenly woke, his eyes opening to reveal swirling galaxies. The patterns across his skin synchronized with those of every awakened human, and in that moment, Astrid understood Rena's true plan. The child wasn't just carrying knowledge, he was a key, designed to unlock something that had been hidden in humanity since the dawn of their species. "You have no idea what you're doing," Void Speaker Nyx snarled. "The power you're touching could tear reality apart." "No," Astrid countered, feeling the connection growing stronger as more humans around the world began manifesting patterns of their own, far more than the 17 they had awakened. "It's not about tearing anything apart. It's about bringing things together." The Void Collective ships opened fire, their reality-distorting weapons targeting major population centers. But as the beams of darkness descended, points of light blazed across the planet. Humanity's awakening had begun, and the true battle for Earth's future was about to unfold. The sky above Oslo burned with impossible colors as reality itself buckled under the strain of opposing forces. Void collective energy beams, pitch black and reality warping, slammed against shields of crystalline light generated by the awakened humans. Each impact sent shockwaves of geometric patterns rippling across the atmosphere. Astrid stood atop the transformed bunker, her body blazing with energy as she coordinated humanity's defense through the newly formed neural network linking all awakened individuals. The patterns flowing across her skin had evolved, becoming more complex, more organic, less like mathematical equations and more like living art. "Status report," General Petrov's voice crackled through what remained of conventional communications. "The shields are holding," Astrid responded, watching as more points of light appeared across the global holographic display. "And we're still awakening. Thousands now. The pattern is spreading exponentially." Above them, Void Speaker Nyx's flagship descended through the turbulent atmosphere, its crystalline tentacles lashing out at the defensive barrier. Each strike carried coded sequences designed to unravel the very fabric of spacetime, but something unexpected was happening. Where void energy met human-generated shields, new patterns emerged, hybrid formations neither side had seen before. "Impossible," Nyx's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Your species lacks the cognitive architecture to manipulate quantum geometries at this level. Unless..." There was a pause, then fury erupted in the Void Speaker's tone. "The Stellari didn't just give you their knowledge. They gave you their evolution." In his chamber, infant Evan floated in a sphere of pure light, his tiny form a conduit for energies that stretched across the planet. Dr. Blackwood's instruments had long since overloaded, but he continued documenting everything with wide-eyed wonder. "They're targeting the child," Astrid announced, feeling the Void Collective strategy through the pattern link. "All ships converging. They'll sacrifice their distributed attack formation to eliminate the threat." But as the massive ships began their movement, something unexpected occurred. The hybrid patterns formed by the collision of void and human energies began to replicate, spreading across the sky like a living web. Where they touched the Void Collective ships, the vessel's dark surfaces began to crystallize. "Your weapons are useless," Nyx declared, though there was a new note in the Void Speaker's voice, uncertainty. "We have spent millennia perfecting our mastery of the Void. We are its voice, its will made manifest." "That's your fundamental mistake," Astrid replied, understanding flowing through her as Evan's patterns synchronized with her own. "You sought to master these forces. We're learning to dance with them." Around the world, awakened humans began moving in unconscious synchronization. The patterns across their skin shifted into new configurations, telling a story written in the language of reality itself. It was humanity's story, not of conquest or dominion, but of adaptation, of survival through change, of finding harmony in chaos. "The Stellari chose us," Astrid continued, the revelation flowing through her, "not because we were perfect, but because we were imperfect. Not because we were strong, but because we know what it means to be weak. Not because we had mastered the universe, but because we never stopped wondering at its mysteries." The hybrid patterns accelerated their spread, each new formation more complex than the last. The Void Collective ship's attempts to retreat were hampered by the crystallization creeping across their hulls. Their weapons, designed to unmake reality, found themselves instead transforming it in ways their builders had never imagined. But victory wasn't assured. As the 5 ships converged above Oslo, they began a transformation of their own. Their crystalline tentacles merged, forming a massive geometric construct that pulsed with void energy. At its center, Void Speaker Nyx's form grew, becoming a living embodiment of entropy. "If we cannot unmake you," Nyx announced, "we will force your evolution in our own image." The void does not compromise. It consumes. The construct released a pulse of dark energy unlike anything they'd seen before. Where it touched, awakened humans screamed as their patterns began to invert. The crystalline transformations protecting the bunker started to crack. Even infant Evan's chamber showed signs of strain, the protective fields fluctuating. Astrid felt the void energy tearing at her own patterns, trying to corrupt the very language of reality she had just begun to understand. But in that moment of crisis, she remembered something Rena had shown her through the crystal, something about humanity's greatest strength. "Everyone," she called through the pattern link, her voice reaching every awakened human on Earth, "stop fighting the void. Remember who we are. What we've always been." As the darkness pressed in, humanity prepared to demonstrate why they had been chosen as guardians of a power that could reshape reality itself. The true nature of Rena's gift was about to be revealed, and the Void Collective was about to learn why trying to force humanity into a single pattern was their gravest mistake. The void energy pulsed through Oslo's skies, turning day to endless night. But where it touched awakened humans, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of corrupting their patterns, the darkness began to change, transformed by the one force the Void Collective had never learned to counter: human creativity. Astrid stood her ground, watching as the patterns across her skin absorbed the void energy and reshaped it. Each awakened human was doing the same, but no two patterns were identical. Where the Void Collective sought uniformity, humanity embraced diversity. Where they demanded control, humanity offered choice. "What are you doing?" Void Speaker Nyx's voice held genuine confusion as the massive geometric construct above Oslo began to shimmer with new patterns. "This is not possible. The void cannot be reshaped." "We're not reshaping it," Astrid replied, understanding flowing through her as she watched thousands of unique human patterns interact with the darkness. "We're accepting it. Incorporating it. Making it part of our story." In his chamber, infant Evan's eyes opened wide, revealing not just galaxies now, but entire universes of possibility. The patterns flowing from him shifted into something entirely new, a bridge between light and darkness, order and chaos, being and unbeing. Dr. Blackwood, who had been frantically documenting everything, suddenly gasped. "The hybrid patterns, they're not just a defense mechanism. They're a new language." He was right. As void energy met human creativity, the geometric patterns evolved into something neither side had seen before. They told stories of light and darkness dancing together, of order emerging from chaos and chaos breathing life into order. Each awakened human contributed their own unique verse to this universal poem. Above them, the Void Collective's massive construct began to transform. The crystalline tentacles, once weapons of unmaking, flowered into impossible geometric blossoms. Dark energy swirled with human light, creating structures that celebrated both the order the Void Collective sought and the chaos they feared. "You don't understand," Nyx insisted, but the Void Speaker's voice had lost its hatred, replaced by something close to wonder. The void must consume. It is the ultimate truth of existence. No, Astrid countered, raising her hands as the patterns across her skin sang with both light and shadow. The ultimate truth is that existence isn't about one force dominating another. It's about finding harmony between opposing forces. Through the pattern link, she felt every awakened human reaching the same understanding. The Stellari hadn't given humanity weapons or mere technology. They'd given them the chance to prove what made them unique in the universe, their ability to adapt, to find beauty in opposition, to create synthesis from conflict. Evan's chamber began to pulse with a new kind of energy. The infant's patterns, now a perfect blend of light and void, reached out to touch both human and void collective structures. Where they connected, transformation followed. Not destruction or domination, but evolution. "The child," Nyx whispered, comprehension finally dawning. "The Stellari didn't send him to defeat us. They sent him to transform us. All of us." The massive construct above Oslo was now a work of art, a geometric cathedral built from both void and light. Similar transformations were happening at every point where void collective ships had attacked Earth. The weapons of unmaking had become tools of creation. Astrid felt Rena's presence in the crystal she carried, a final message waiting to be understood. "Your people sought to master the void," she said to Nyx, "just as the Stellari sought to master light. But humanity? We never sought to master anything. We learned to live with our own inner light and darkness. That's why we were chosen." The pattern link hummed with truth. Every awakened human was now a bridge between forces that had warred since the beginning of time. Through their art, their music, their stories, their very way of being, they showed how opposition could become harmony. Void Speaker Nyx descended from the transformed construct, its form now a beautiful blend of darkness and light. "We came to prevent what we saw as a catastrophe," the Void Speaker admitted. "Instead, we have witnessed a birth." Around the world, the new patterns settled into stable configurations. The Void Collective ships, no longer weapons of destruction, became anchors for a new kind of relationship between realities. Humanity had not just survived first contact, they had evolved it into something entirely unexpected. In his chamber, Evan smiled, his tiny form containing the promise of a future where light and void danced together in endless creativity. The patterns across his skin told a story of two civilizations learning from a third, of ancient enemies becoming partners in creation, of a universe where diversity wasn't just protected, it was celebrated. Astrid looked up at the transformed sky, where auroral lights now played in harmony with void energies. "So," she asked Nyx, "what stories shall we write together?" Above them, the geometric cathedral chimed with possibilities, its patterns a promise of adventures yet to come. Earth had taken its place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but by showing the universe a new way to grow. The legacy of two worlds had become the birthday of one shared future, written in the language of reality itself.